let's get started. So in thinking about this, like I said, this is kind of more, this presentation has a lot of different ideas and a lot of different topics that could be great for you. Um, in thinking about it, what I would want you to do is, maybe pick up some ideas from this and put it in your toolbox to be able to help you in the future for when you have some run-ins with stress or you have some, anxiety or depression come up, or there's something that you're thinking about. So hopefully some of the things we talk about today can be some tools for you. And I'd love for you to pick up something to put in your toolbox from today. It's kind of the goal. So first thing we want to talk about is stress. And so managing stress is a very important thing for us because stress is going to be with us for the rest of our lives. We used to try to think about, well, we could try to get rid of stress or try to manage it a little bit more successfully, and that became the goal, is managing it, because we all have stress, time, money, relationships, all of these things can be very good things, but they also cause a lot of stress in our lives. And so those are things we want to think about a little bit. So in thinking about stress, I have this reservoir idea, and I like this a lot in talking about managing life and managing stress. And so you can see that this is just a man-made lake there. It has water, in the reservoir, and it has water coming out. And that's like life for us. We all have water coming out, and that's kind of like the stress of life. And so if you think about, well, what are some of the things that might be taking water out of our reservoir? And those might be, like we talked about, growing older, the weather, money issues, stress, communication with your kids, your partner, work problems, all of these different things are going to be with us throughout our lives and are going to cause us to have some stress, and that's going to take some water out of our reservoir. So we have to do a really good job of putting water back in. And so when I think about it, it's like, okay, well, what's the rain? What's the snow? What's the river that leads to filling up our reservoir? What are those things that really help us to manage some of this stress of our lives? And so as you think about those, for you, what adds water to your reservoir? And here's some really big ones that we think about. These are probably the top five that I talk to a lot of people about, and I'm going to talk about some of these today. But we really need to be getting, some good sleep, exercising. Like I said, these topics we're going to go into a little bit more, so I won't expound upon them too much right now. Eating healthy is going to be really important. Talking about some of this stress. Not that they can take the stress away or change it, but just even talking about it helps it kind of get off your shoulders and helps you to feel a little bit differently. And then doing some things that make you happy. We all got to do some things that makes us happy throughout the day. And that's very important for managing stress. So that's kind of a top five. If somebody came in and talked to me about, difficulty managing stress, those would be the top five that I would start with. And then here's some other ones that, people like to talk about a good amount, and so there's thousands of things that take water out of your reservoir. There's another thousand that puts water back in. And so I know I've done some presentations on stress before on the YouTube page. So if you're interested in that, and other people have done them too. But that's a really important topic for our day. These things are kind of ways to manage stress before and after. In the moment, there's some other things to manage stress, whether that's some deep breathing, whether that's going for a walk, whether that's, some meditation, whether that's some other skills that you can gain, through talking with a therapist or viewing some of our other presentations. So here's some ideas for you guys to kind of think about. Managing stress a lot helps us to be more resilient. And that's one of our next topics here. This tree kind of looks like a tree that's pretty resilient to me. As you can see, the bottom's kind of fallen out. and it's keeping itself alive through the sides. And sometimes that's how we can feel from time to time. And whatever it is that can help us to be more resilient is going to help us to be more successful. So in thinking about resilience, it's kind of a buzzword of our days, and it's thinking that, we're going to have some life challenges, just like we're going to have some stress. But, being resilient is being able to, be optimistic, continue to be high functioning, continue to be successful, even though we're going to experience some negative and very difficult events throughout our lives. Um, we don't develop, resilience unless there is difficult things. If everything was great, then we wouldn't have to have any resilience. If that tree didn't have the ground falling out, then it would just keep growing and everything would be just fine. But that's not how life is, and so we run into disappointments, we run into difficult things, and we have to learn how to deal with those things. And that can be a very important thing for us. It feels like teenagers and kids nowadays aren't as resilient as we used to be. There's some things that are easier and some things that are obviously harder than in the past, but people struggle with some resilience nowadays. So these are some great things that resilience leads to. It really helps us to learn and to grow and to be a lot better, more successful at school. If we're more resilient, then we're going to miss class and work a lot less. People that aren't very resilient, they're going to get sick or they're going to get stressed or they're going to get things that cause them trouble, and they're just not going to make it to work that day. And so if we're more resilient, we're going to be a better, worker, we're going to be a better employee. We're going to use, other ways, drinking and smoking and using drugs a lot less because, we just don't need those to manage our emotions and what's going on in life as much because, we feel like, hey, we're going to be a lot more successful. If we're resilient, then we can be around our families a little bit more. As you guys know, just getting through the holidays, sometimes being around family can be a little bit difficult from time to time. They do some things that are upsetting and difficult for us to see and be around. And so ultimately, if we're more resilient, we can deal with those things with a grain of salt and be a little bit more successful with that stuff. And our health is actually a lot better if we go through things that are hard and get through them, successfully. So that's a really good thing. So now that we know about that resilience is good, let's talk about some things to build that. Having a real purpose. What are you trying to accomplish in your life? What are some of those things that you would really like to achieve or to be successful with? Building some positive beliefs in your abilities. To some extent, you're going to have to do some things to grow your abilities and to be more successful with that. This strong social network, we talked about that's one of the things that helps you to manage stress. And so having a social network of friends that you can talk about the good things and the bad things is going to be really important for you. Change is a part of life. Even though we might not love it that much, everything in life kind of changes from jobs to family situations to different stressors to different money situations. We want to embrace, these changes and try to make the most of them. We want to accept that change is going to happen and not fight against that change, but to think of ways that we can make progress with that change and to make it as good as it can be. I like this in that, being optimistic, you don't need to ignore problems by being optimistic, but the goal would be to understand that, hey, they're going to be temporary and you got everything that you're going to need to make it through it. So you got the skills, you got the ability to make it through these difficult things that are going to happen, these difficult challenges that's going to happen to all of us in our lives. So a couple more ways, as we talked about, you're going to hear this a couple times throughout this presentation. We got to take care of ourselves. So sleep, eating, exercise, those are going to be topics that we're going to continue to discuss throughout today and have a huge, huge impact on your lives and your mental health throughout your life. So we want to develop some problem solving skills. We want to, those things that are stressing you out, we want to talk about them and talk about, okay, well, what can you do to be successful with those? But how can we problem solve those situations to make them so that they don't continually cause you as much stress, so that you can manage them a little bit more successfully? you know, Establishing some goals, some goals, we'll talk about SMART goals from time to time, goals that are going to be, specific, and that they're going to be measurable, and that they're going to be attainable, and that you're going to be able to really do these goals and to be successful with them, and that you can know that you're making progress with them. So if you're trying to lose weight, rather than saying, hey, I want to lose weight, a better goal would be, I want to lose 2 pounds this month. Or I want, rather than saying I want to eat healthier, what would that look like? Well, I want to add in this amount of fruit or this amount of vegetables, or I want to not eat at restaurants as much or fast food, and a specific number, that you can really think about would be beneficial. So taking action, it's gonna you're going to have to, start doing some stuff. You're going to have to, start walking with your feet. You're going to have to start moving your hands. You're going to have to use your brain to do these things rather than just sitting and thinking, well, that would be nice. We're going to have to actually take some action to build some of this resilience. And then the last thing is knowing that, hey, we're not perfect right now. We're not an end product. We got to keep working on some things. And when we make mistakes, when we fail throughout our lives, which we're going to do, then we don't want to get discouraged. We want to say, hey, that's not exactly where I want to be. I'm going to celebrate some progress, and I'm going to take some action in the right way. So those are some ways to really build some of this resilience that we're talking about. Going to move into talking about eating healthy a little bit. Told you that this is going to happen a lot. I want you just for a second to think about, what do you think is the standard American diet that we have that's kind of normal for a lot of people out there? What's your diet? Not how are you trying to lose weight, but what do you eat on a daily and a weekly basis? Let's see if some of these numbers kind of match up with what you're doing. So 63% of what Americans eat comes from mostly processed foods. So we're talking about fast food, we're talking about restaurants, we're talking about soft drinks, we're talking about snacks, potato chips, desserts. So 63% of that, which is a ton, is coming from that. So then 25% is coming from meat, pretty much in some way or another, some type of protein, whether that's chicken or turkey or red meat or fish. And so there's some really good stuff in there. And then you got 12% of the calories are coming from plant-based foods. So that's fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, different things like that. One thing that's pretty interesting and probably sad for us is half of those calories from the plant-based are coming from French fries. So half of the good stuff is a French fry that we're eating. So really we're eating 6% of really good fruits and vegetables for us. So that's something that if we're going to improve our eating, this is something that we really need to look at. So that standard American diet that we just talked about sadly leads to a lot of chronic conditions. And so in some studies, they came out with 7 out of 10 deaths are because of chronic conditions. And the good thing and the bad thing is that they are very preventable by what we eat and how we exercise and sleep and everything like that. But these chronic conditions, heart disease, cancer, stroke, arthritis, Alzheimer's, diabetes, a lot of these chronic diseases, 7 out of 10 of them are because of what we are doing. It's not that they just happen to us. It's a lot more of what we're choosing to put in our bodies and what we do with our bodies. So they're saying more and more that these chronic conditions are because of decades of unhealthy eating, sleeping, exercise, not managing stress very successfully. And so those are leading to these very difficult things for us. So just a quick little statistic for you. So they've done this study that said that if we, ate 100 grams of fruit, 100 grams of vegetables, ate some whole grains, and cut out one, drink that we're drinking, we would avoid, 3.5 million, cardiovascular situations, and then, deaths actually, and then 4 million actually cardiovascular events. That's just if we ate pretty much half a banana, some broccoli, and a little bit of whole grains and cut out one drink, each day. So these things can be really small, like a banana that you would see there. Everybody that's measured their food before had put a banana on a scale. That one of those bananas that you're seeing right there is probably 200, 250 grams. And so like half a banana is what we're talking about of what we would need to eat in there. So lots of interesting things to think about with that. So, what types of food should we be eating? I would say most of you know what we should be eating. They know that we should be eating some proteins and we should be eating some fruits and things like that. Um, but this is kind of a thought that's really beneficial for most of us is that we should, most everything in moderation. So fats, there's some really great fats for us. An avocado has a lot of fat in it. Olive oil has a lot of fat in it. Walnuts has a lot of fat in it. Those are amazing things for our bodies and for our brains. There's a lot of carbs. Fruit has a lot of carbs in it. And so those things are really amazing for us. And proteins is great, the building blocks of all of our muscles and everything that we do. So, we want to keep everything in moderation. I don't have dessert on here, but I would tell you, I even want you to eat dessert from time to time. Does that mean I want you to eat dessert every day? Probably not. Not if you want to be very healthy, but should you have it a couple times a week if it's something that you really enjoy? Yeah, I think that you should. I don't want you to miss out on life, but I would want that to be a smaller percentage of the things that you're eating. If you're 80% of the time putting in really good stuff, some really good proteins and some great fruits and vegetables and some nuts and some seeds, then a little, of something else, whether it's eating fast food or dessert here and there, is going to be perfectly fine for you. You know, this calorie deficit, if you're thinking about trying to lose weight, most people will go back to this calorie deficit. It's not everything, but it's a way to manage your weight and to be able to lose weight if that's something that you're interested in. So what it says is, say, your body naturally, by a little bit of exercise and being alive and breathing, burns, 2,000 calories every day. If you wanted to slowly lose weight, you'd have to eat lower than 2,000 calories. So maybe that's 1,800. And then after a while, you would slowly lose weight by being in a calorie deficit. One thing I'd want you to think about with healthy eating is making small changes, small healthy changes that are going to work for you. You know, it's going to be a lot easier and a lot more beneficial rather than thinking about what you have to take out. I'd want you to think about what you can put in that's going to be a little healthier. So if you drive to work every day with a Dr. Pepper, maybe we could drive to work with a water, and so thinking rather than thinking I have to take out my Dr. Pepper, it's thinking, okay, well, I want to drive to work and I want to have a water with me. Maybe you have a water, you begin with a water and a Dr. Pepper, and you try to push yourself to drink some water along the way so that your body doesn't need as much, liquid. And so it's actually going to drink some water instead of all of that Dr. Pepper. And that rather than drinking two Dr. Peppers that day, it's drinking one. And so just some little things to think about. What can I put in that would be healthy? And a lot of times that's going to push out some of this negative, the things that maybe aren't as good for us. If we're full on the good stuff, then it's less likely we're going to eat some of the things that might not be as good for our bodies. If you really want to make a change, you're going to be a lot more motivated by what you want, what you envision as the good rather than the scary things, you know? And so if you want to be able to run around with your grandkids, if you want to be able to go for a walk or be able to go upstairs and not to breathe hard, then those things are going to be beneficial for you. And I would say I want you to add some emotion to what you want behind that. What would that mean to you to be able to go on a hike with your grandkid and be able to keep up with them? To be able to run around in the backyard, and what would that feel like to you? To be able to do all of these things, to Disneyland and to be able to fit in all the chairs and to be able to do everything that you want. What would that be like? Those are the things that are going to motivate you more than thinking about, getting cancer or, any of these cardiovascular diseases. We've all seen those commercials on smoking and how terrible that is for people. They found that even though those are terrible, they're not as motivating as what would really look good for these people, what would really help them to be successful. So be motivated by the positive rather than some of the negative. As tons and tons of really positive things with healthy eating. These are just a few of them. For one, you're gonna feel better about yourself. You could lose some weight if that's what you're looking for. You could gain some muscle if that's what you're looking for. Your body, your heart, everything is going to get better. But just even your mood. Healthy eating plays a huge role in what your mood is going to be like and how you're going to be around other people. And it's going to improve, your memory. There's a lot of brain fog out in the world today. And there's a lot of simple ways to really help with that. Usually in listening to doctors talk about brain fog, it's not this big, huge issue that you have. It's not a real diagnosable medical illness. It's more of what we're putting in our bodies and the type of sleep that we're getting and that we're not really managing our stress, and so those things are leading to these memory and these recall issues that a lot of us are struggling with. If we're going to eat healthier, then a lot of times we're going to want to exercise. And then we're going to sleep a little bit better because we exercise. And so they all kind of go together in thinking about this. So that kind of transitions us into talking a little bit about sleep. So how much sleep is necessary? Everybody usually gets this one right when I ask them. They'll tell me 8 hours is about what they've been told. Usually 7 to 9 is great, somewhere around there. It's worth thinking about, well, how do I feel about my sleep currently? Am I getting enough? As adults, I think we always could have a little bit more. And so that's something to really think about. But remember, if you're not getting, at least 7, it's worthwhile of thinking about maybe I need to make some progress in that area. And then if we're getting past 9, it's worthwhile thinking, do I really need more than 9? Is there other things that I could be getting done? And think about, am I feeling a little bit down? Is that contributing to my sleep? So some things that, that if we're not sleeping enough, we're obviously going to be a lot more irritable. It's going to be difficult taking care of our kids. I have 2 little kids that I'm taking care of at home. And if I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm a lot more tempered with them. I'm a lot more irritable, and I'm not the type of dad that I would like to be. And I'm not the type of partner that I'd like to be, you know. And so, these people are all, we get a lot more stressed when we don't get enough sleep. You can see some mental health stuff here, anxiety and depression, are a lot more likely to be a cause of difficulties in our life. This is why, those five things: exercise, sleep, eating relatively healthy, managing your stress, doing some things that make you happy. Um, those are some things that I talk about with almost all of my clients because they have a huge impact on our mental health. So some things about sleep right here. Sleep recharges our brain. Our brain doesn't turn off when we're sleeping. That's why we get dreams of different things happening. Um, but our brain is getting ready for the next day. It's cleaning everything out. I don't know if any of you guys have watched, Inside Out when, little Riley goes to bed, and that's when all of our memories go into the different spots and they get ready for the next day. And so ultimately, your brain does a really good job at kind of solidifying information that you're going to need and getting rid of the stuff that you don't need. And so sleep is very, very important for us in those ways. It's going to help us with our moods. We're going to, have a lot better memory during that time. I don't know if any of you, maybe in your school days or getting ready for some big project or whatever, and you're really studying a lot, and then you go to sleep and you actually remember it more or better in the morning. Well, it's because your brain has been working overnight and has solidified some of that information that you keep giving it and has made it so that you can access it a lot quicker. And so your brain does, really important things when it's sleeping. It cleans itself out, makes us prepare for the next day, increases our happiness a lot. And we all want some more of that for sure. So let's talk about some habits, that can be healthy for us. And you guys thinking about this, I'd want you to think, okay, well, what are the habits that I do currently that help me to sleep well? And what are some of the habits that make it so that I'm not sleeping so well? And so here are a few that I'd want you to think about. What is your sleep hygiene routine? And so what do you do, a half hour, an hour before you go to bed? What helps you to be able to get ready for that? Whether that's, well, I turn off the TV an hour before bed or a half hour. I stop looking at my phone a half hour before bed. I brush my teeth, I do some meditation or some yoga, or I do some stretches, or I take a bath, or you know, I, I just do all of the things that help to calm me down. I write in my journal, whatever it is. What do you do that's kind of your routine that helps you to get good sleep? And that might, if you're struggling with sleep, that might be something for you to come in and talk to a therapist about of what can I do to help me to do that a little bit more successfully. Here's a couple ideas for you guys to kind of think about. Caffeine can be a good thing for us. It also can be, take us out of sleeping if we struggle with that or we're drinking a lot of it. There's a lot of studies that say that we probably should be drinking caffeine not after 12 o'clock p.m. So the rest of the day, they'd rather us not drink any caffeine. That a lot of people are not doing that. If that's not you, then let's try some baby steps and maybe let's not drink any after dinner if we're to that point. So, but avoiding caffeine can be really beneficial for us. Reducing or avoiding naps, there's lots of different information about naps, but if you're taking a lot of naps and you're not able to sleep very well at night, that's something that I would tell you to kind of look at and to try to reduce how long they are so that you're sleeping a little bit better at night. With sleep, we would love it to be like a movie where we could stop it or we could pause it at any time and then we could just go back to it and then that would work out great for us. That's not really how sleep works. We need consecutive sleep. And so the more, 7 to 8 hours of consecutive sleep, the better. When we stop it and we wake up, our body has to get back into it again. And that gets us back into that deeper REM sleep. And that takes a little while to get into. Exercise. Exercise is a great one with sleep. We would rather you exercise earlier in the day if you can to avoid it interrupting any sleep. Um, but if you only have time in the evening, then, and that's something that I would, obviously would like you to do, I'd want you to think, is that interrupting my sleep at all? How long does it take for me to wind down before I need to go to, before I'm able to go to sleep? So earlier is better, but doing it is much better than nothing. And maybe if we're doing it too close to bedtime, maybe we're not doing anything that's too much that gets our heart beat up too much that's going to cause us to struggle with sleep. We talked about electronics a little bit. Some relaxation techniques, anything that you can think of that helps to relax you. Maybe that's, writing in a journal, maybe that's reading a book. Anything that you can do to kind of calm yourself down would be really beneficial. I think we've had a couple comments on this one. I might try to look at those. The last one I want to talk about with you is this 20-minute rule. If you get in your bed and you haven't fallen asleep after 20 minutes, a lot of experts would say to get out of bed and to go get a drink of water, get a book, write in a journal, and kind of do that until you're feeling a little bit tired again, and then get back into bed, and that will help you to fall asleep. What they would suggest not doing is turning on the TV or getting on your phone or your iPad, anything that's going to provide some of that blue light that's going to keep you up and keep your brain going. So try to do some of those other things. There's a great book that's called Sleep Smarter, that if you're having some struggles with sleep, I would suggest it for you to look at, along with, obviously, you could talk with us at any time. Let me see if I can see any of these comments, if I can see any of those that look good. So, okay. Um, on to the next. So exercise or physical activity. Obviously really, really important for us is some exercise. I want you to think about some statistics and kind of think where you're at with these. So 1 in 4 adults and 1 in 5 are getting the recommended physical activity guidelines. So that's, 25% or 20% of high school students. So a very small amount are getting the exercise that we need. This was an interesting one to me. 31 million adults aged 50 or older are inactive, which means that they get no activity besides going to work and pretty much walking back and forth from the fridge, or doing some very light chores that they have to do. So there's no going for walks, there's no going to the gym, there's no hiking, there's no riding a bike, there's nothing else that they're doing. So a significant amount of people are getting no exercise besides work. So problem with that is this behavior, increases heart disease and heart in your high blood pressure. We got heart disease in there twice, red and blue, so that you guys get really accustomed to that one. Type 2 diabetes, cancer, all of these different things are because of not being active, moving not very much, and not standing a lot. So I used to do a presentation with a nutritionist, and she would say, if you're sitting, then you're storing calories. And if you're standing, then you're burning calories. So it's just kind of an interesting way that she would say that. But we think about money and everything like that, and struggles with money. A low level of physical activity is going to lead to tons and tons of health costs for all of us. So here's kind of some things we should be doing. So kids 3 to 5, they should be active throughout the whole day. I have a 4-year-old that's running around pretty much all day long. So I don't know, kids are probably a little better at this than adults. So then 6 to 17-year-olds need about 60 minutes of activity a day, of kind of moderate to vigorous type of thing. And so remember, only I think it was 1 in 5 of them are getting this. So if you have one of these kids, let's get them being active. Adults, we're looking at 150 minutes to 300 minutes of aerobic exercise every day, and then some lifting a couple times a week. So something that's, doing this resistance type of training. It doesn't have to be with weights. It can be with weights. But weights are a great thing for us. But it could be push-ups, pull-ups, squats, different things like that. But weights really help us with a lot of that stuff. So we should be getting lots of walks in and some running and riding bikes if we can, and getting some lifting in. So, but any amount of exercise is going to have some serious health benefits for us. And so I want all of us to think about doing those. So some just kind of a little model here for you to think about. Obviously, when we're exercising, our brain releases these endorphins that helps us to feel good. It makes, it reduces some pain, eases some emotional issues that we could have, help us to feel better about ourselves. To me, I've always thought about this as, whether it's God's or nature's, antidepressant for us. So exercise is a huge, important thing for us. With a functional MRI, they kind of monitor, a couple students' brains, 20 of them, and they showed, them taking a test. And, after there on the left is what their brain looked like when they were sitting quietly before the test. And the right is when they took a walk before they took the test. So to me, I think you could see pretty easily who would more likely do better on that test if they had the same amount of study and the same amount of brain memory and capacity that, if being active is going to be very important for us. So throw up here some benefits for you. I'm sure a few of you have heard a lot of these. The endorphin one improves our sleep. If the sleep, the exercise, and the eating healthy, all three of them go together. If you get some good sleep, it's a lot more likely that you're going to feel like you have energy to get some exercise. And if you exercise and you're trying to meet a goal, it's a lot less likely that you're going to eat food that you don't want to eat. And if you go to sleep on time, then it's a lot less likely that you're going to eat bad food staying up late at night. There's a lot of studies that say that the longer you stay up, the more likely you're going to have a difficult time, having a pretty good diet because you're staying up and you're eating and you're not moving around a lot. So exercise, one of the thoughts with it is it's going to give you more energy throughout the day, and then it's going to have you have less energy when you're at night ready to go to bed. And so your body's going to be less likely to be awake. It counters a lot of that anxiety and depression and stress. It helps you to feel good about yourself. It's going to make you more optimistic. You're going to feel good about the things you're trying to achieve. Your brain's going to work a little bit better. So you're going to be more focused, like we just saw in that previous slide. And hopefully it's enjoyable for you. I would tell you to find some exercise that you enjoy. Not the one that's the best, not the one that's the most amazing that you've read research on and that you hate. It's going to be you're going to do the exercise that you actually like. So if you like doing Pilates or yoga, great, do Pilates and yoga. If you want to play pickleball, amazing, play pickleball. But do an exercise that makes you happy because you're going to do it more and it's going to, kind of kill two birds with one stone type of idea. So that's kind of our exercise, sleep, and eating type of stuff. I wanted to tell you a little bit about finances, and in thinking about that, why would Blomquist Hell or a mental health, therapist talk about finances? Well, for one, there's lots of people in this world that are struggling with finances, and it's causing them a lot of stress and causing their relationships a lot of difficulty. So One of the reasons in talking about this with you today is I want you to know that you can come to Blomquist Hell and request to talk to a therapist that would talk to you about finances and help you do some of that. So let's discuss some of those things. So these are a couple reasons, some statistics why it would be beneficial to get our money in order a little bit. So 80% of people said their number one stress in life is money. Um, this might be a reason for that. 70% of people have no savings. And so that's, pretty difficult for us. 68% of people are worried they're not going to have enough money to retire. I could see that as even higher if you have no savings. 57% of people can't come up with $1,000 if they needed to. And just like stress, just like our needing to be resilient, that we're going to have needs of $1,000 multiple times throughout our lifetime, whether it's one of us getting sick, or we get in a car crash, or our furnace breaks down, or our water heater, whatever. We're going to have things that we need to have some extra money for. 56% of people don't have a budget. 54% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, which is going to make it very difficult when we have any of those, financial things that happen, those struggles. 52% of people have difficulty controlling their money worries. Lots of divorces, 40% are caused by financial issues. I know I talk to people about finances a lot, and a lot of times couples. And one of the things is they see money differently. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So you miss a paycheck, you're in poverty. Credit cards, so 29% of people, rather than having an emergency fund, they're going to use credit cards instead. 28% of people aren't paying their bills on time. 26% of people 50 and over, they don't expect to retire because of debt. So they're going to work forever, which doesn't sound great to me. 24% of millennials, they only have very basic financial literacy. So this is something that should be talked a lot more about in school to a lot of people. And luckily, it's happening a little bit more, but that needs to continue. This is a very interesting statistic. 21% of people believe that winning the lottery is the way they're going to retire. So hence why we might have so many people playing the lottery. I put on there 113 billion. That's how much money every year is being put on the lottery. Think about what type of money we would have if we were putting that in our Roth IRA or our 401ks. So then on average, people carry around $23,000 in personal debt. That's not their house. A house is usually considered a good debt. But this is, credit cards. This might be car loans. This might be other short-term loan type of things. This might be even schooling loans. So that's a lot of debt. So I want to talk a little bit about communication skills between finances, kind of family finances. So you in your couples and your families, you should make time to talk about your finances regularly, at very least every year, to know where we're at, what we're trying to achieve. We should all know about the passwords of, where our 401k is, where our health savings account is and what it's looking like. Roth IRAs, if we have a high yield savings account, we should all have access and know how to get to that money if we need to. We need to identify the differences and ways we can work together as a couple. How do we see money? What was money like as a child? Did we have enough? Were we poor? What was that like? So we need to identify what we would like to use our money for. Like we talked about, both partners need to know about the finances and, and to some extent divide tasks. It's normal for one person to be more interested in money in a relationship than the other. Both parties need to know about where you're at and how to find things if that person isn't there that day. If they get in a car crash and they can't help with money anymore, the other partner needs to know what to do, how they can get money, access to it. Where do those things come from? So we want to be honest about, with our families, with our partner about our money situation. If we're in debt or we're using credit cards, we want to make sure the other person knows what's going on. There shouldn't be secret accounts that you have, secret savings, secret, anything. And this happens a lot. These things need to be discussed with each other so that you're both on the same page about where you're at. We want to respect some of these differences, and set some goals together. Now that we've talked about it, let's set some goals that's going to help our families to be successful. We want to involve children when it's appropriate. All throughout our kids' lives, we want to be talking to them about how money works and how to save money and how to invest money and how to give money to things that are important to them. So that should be an important part of what we're discussing. We should not make any large purchases without talking about it with our significant other. I have had multiple people buy cars without talking about it with their with their significant other. I've had them buy apartments or townhomes sometimes even in other countries without discussing it with them. And this is kind of craziness to me. Any large purchase, you determine what a large purchase means between the two of you and make sure you talk about it with each other before you do it. If it's like a $20, $50 thing on Amazon or at Target, you probably don't have to talk about every purchase you're going to have. But if it's a big one, you determine how much that is, you should discuss that. We want to communicate about finances with a lot of kindness and being curious about their thoughts with it. There's a fantastic book that's called The Psychology of Money that says that nobody's crazy about how they think about money. A lot of times it comes from their childhood and some of the things that's happened to them throughout their lives. And so once we know the reasons behind it, it's a lot easier to understand and to be on the same page. Let's talk about those things and come up with some goals together that we feel good about. I have a couple that, one of them would love to give away all of their money to good causes and to help people, which is fantastic and amazing. And then we have another person that's thinking about their future and then retiring and have money for retirement. And neither one of these thoughts are wrong. But what they need to do is talk about these thoughts together, come up with some goals about giving and retirement, and come up with how they can do that successfully. And that's kind of the goal with this idea. It's not going to be great to blame each other for financial problems and and about the situation that we're in. There's probably some changes that need to be made, but let's look for ways to solve this issue together. Let's be on the same team. And the issue is that we're in debt. So let's figure out, since we're on the same team, using our brains working together, how can we figure out ways to reduce the debt that we're in? This is probably the last slide we'll talk about today. I like these guys a lot. They're called the Money Guy. You can see their little website down there if you want resources and stuff from them, but they have a YouTube channel and they have a podcast that's called The Money Guy. This is called their financial order of operations. This is what they think you should do with the next dollar that you get. And like I said, I really like their content and what they do. Some people really like Dave Ramsey, and he has some really good stuff also. I like these guys a little bit more, but there's some very similar type of ideas. The first thing they want you to do with your money is they want you to have enough to cover any of your deductibles. And so all that means is you look at your health insurance, you look at your car insurance, your homeowner's insurance. What is the highest deductible that you're going to need? So if you go to the doctor and you're going to have to pay this for them to do what they need to do, what is that? I was looking at my highest deductible today, and for my health insurance, I have a high deductible plan. It was 3,200. So in this, to be past step one, I would have to have $3,200 sitting in the bank ready for a deductible issue for a health insurance thing. And so yours can be different than that. Yours might be lower than that. And so ultimately, but you want to have that money sitting in the bank. It could be in a high savings account. So it's getting, more of interest, but you want to be able to get to that at any moment if you need it. The second thing they'd want you to do with your money is to get your employer match. So if your employer is giving you free money, like, some people might give away 3% or 5%. So if you put in, 3% of how much you earn, then they're going to match it and give you 3%, whether that's in a 401k or something like that. You want to get that free money. You don't want to go above the free money in step two, but you want to get the free money because that's 100% return. So that's very important. So get the free money and then move to the next step, which would be debt. So it says high interest debt. You see in step 9, it's low interest debt and kind of shows a house. Houses are usually low interest debt, so they do not want you to pay them off this early. Dave Ramsey wants you to pay off your house a little sooner than they do. And so that's something for you to think about. But high interest debt, is going to be credit cards. They can be up to 20% you'd be paying in debt. Other things, loans, different things, can be a lot higher. An auto loan, they want you to be pretty careful with those, but if they're low, then maybe it's not a high interest debt. A lot of times they are a debt that they'd like you to get rid of. Usually your house is the biggest one that they'd call a low interest that they don't want you to get rid of this soon. And then number 4, this emergency reserves. And so what that is they want you to have 3 to 6 months of how much money you spend every month. So if you spend $6,000 just kind of on the basic stuff, then that would mean you need to have 3 times $6,000, which would be $18,000 just sitting in a high yield savings account for emergencies. That's for when your car breaks down. That's for when your heat goes out in your house, or your air conditioner doesn't work, or you need a new roof or something, some type of health thing that is beyond what a deductible is going to meet. So that's your emergency reserve, 3 to 6 months. And then the last one, this is where it starts getting fun in building wealth and making money. They would say a Roth IRA would be the next step for you. You can put $7,000 in a Roth IRA currently every year. And so you would want to start doing that. A Roth IRA, when you want to take it out in the future, when you retire, you've already paid taxes on it from your job. And so then you will not be taxed on it. And so that's one of the top, type of retirement accounts they would want you to do. So that's finances for you. Like I said, this is briefly just a little information about all of these great topics. I'll probably do another one of these in the future and say, the top 10, the second edition or round 2 of this. And then I'll do some of the other ones that get into communication and relationships and different things like that. But I hope some of these things that we talked about today was really helpful. Like I said, if there's these topics that you want to know more about, please look at our other presentations or make an appointment with one of our counselors, and we'd love to talk about any of these topics to help you out. But I hope you have a great day and a great rest of the week. So thanks for coming.